Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use that promo code CHGO when you sign up and you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. Happy Wednesday. I'm Jay Zawaski with Greg Boysen and Mario Tirabassi. But you'll notice on set there's a very tall person here with us. It's Ben Pope from the Chicago Sun-Times, Blackhawks beat writer. We just got back, all of us, from Luke Richardson and Kyle Davidson meeting the media. So I think it's officially, we can say it, 100%. The season has begun. The summer is over, and hockey is here. Ben, thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great setup you guys have here, and happy to help kind of kick things off here in the official season, although you guys have been grinding for a while. But
we've been trying to get you here for a while, and things kept happening and falling through or whatever, so it's a good day to have you here, and we appreciate you being here. So we're going to give you the floor first. Davidson and Richardson meet the media today. I wouldn't say there's anything terribly revealing that we didn't really know already, but what stood out from you from what Luke and Kyle had to say?
Yeah, certainly on the news front, nothing that exciting. But I think the most interesting exchange was when Luke was asked about kind of his goals and for the season and defining success. And he mentioned talking to Kyle when he was hired, saying that he was going to try to make his job kind of as hard as possible to win as much as possible this year. And Kyle jumped in and saying that his goal was to win as well. I think we all know behind the scenes this team is kind of built to get a high draft pick, but I don't think he's entirely lying. I'm sure on a night-to-night basis he wants to see the team succeed and the players to do well and develop and increase their trade value or to sort of establish themselves for the future. So it's going to be interesting to kind of juggle that and see how the Blackhawks juggle that over the course of the season. But I thought that was an interesting exchange that they kind of acknowledged that there's a little bit of dissonance between Kyle's goals and Luke's goals as coach.
Yeah, Kyle made sure to jump in and be like, I want to win too.
Yeah.
Like, sure you do, buddy. Everyone's okay.
Yeah, that was definitely like trying to be like, hey, like, I do want to win. Like, the way that he phrased it in Davidson's answer was kind of just like, we're looking long-term, parentheses, we're not going to win this season. But in the short term, game to game, we want to see success. We want to see the team be competitive and win. And he kind of made it more of the point of the coaching staff is like, they're going to try to win, whereas we're trying to build something for the future, which in this season probably won't involve a lot of winning. So it was just kind of interesting to see that aspect from the both of them right there at the same time. Like, hey, you're going to try and win games, and you're giving me you're giving the guy a team that's probably not going to win a lot of games. So it's just an interesting dynamic between the two of them for that, just kind of going into the season with that mentality.
Yeah, it's a fine line to it's got to be weird, but you can have a very successful season and still have the fewest points in the league. Like, it's not like looking at the final standings, you'd be like, oh my God, that was just an awful season. But you could still have successes. And I think that's where Luke's got to try and, have that mentality of like, yeah, okay, we didn't win tonight, but, so-and-so, Lucas Reichel, is improving, or one of the young defensemen is really becoming and earning more playing time. That's how I think you grade successes this season, as opposed to, well, they only had 63 points or whatever it is at the end of the year.
It's what we talked about, competitive losses. And, both guys were asked about what stood out at Prospects Camp and at the Tom Curver's Prospect Showcase. And they both mentioned, especially Kyle, just how competitive the players were, how they're working really hard, they're finishing checks. Everybody on the roster is really grinding and working hard. You don't have those passengers that we've seen in recent years. Like, I don't want to call a guy out, but Alex Nylander, guys like that who kind of are happy to stay in the periphery and not really engage and hope the puck comes their way. You've got a whole roster of guys, maybe their talent isn't, or their skill level isn't as high as Nylander's, but their compete is through the roof. And I think ingraining that culture, that's something that Luke Richardson sort of alluded to. I want to have a team here. I want to have guys that play hard for each other. And you can see in every move that Davidson has made since taking over, that's been the focus. The guys that have left, the guys that have come in, you see that he wants a team that competes hard. And I think the idea of, you might end the season with 63, 65 points, whatever, as long as they're competitive in those games and are trying hard. And I don't know, from a fan perspective, I think the word might be entertaining. I'll take a 4-3 loss if they're out there giving everything they've got. So
in regulation.
Yes, thank you. No extra points. I don't know. It is a very interesting place to be, and Richardson acknowledged that too. Like, look, we know what the reality is here, but you can't. Hockey's not really a sport you can tank game to game. You can design a roster to tank, but you can't go tell your team like, hey, don't try so hard.
Right,
this is not a thing.
I think one more silver lining that we might be able to take out of this season would be the coaching staff as well, kind of settling in and having success on their front. I mean, Luke Richardson's the first-time NHL head coach. The staff is all new. Derek King's never been an NHL assistant before. So we heard today about how they'll divide up the duties with Derek King kind of working on the game prep and Derek Plant taking on the power play and Kevin Dean doing the defense and penalty kill. And for them each to kind of have success in those roles and figure out their structure and their system and how to teach that well to the players, even if it's not immediately working, to have that in place maybe a few years down the line when this team is starting to contend and ideally still has the same coaching staff, because I think that is kind of the goal here. I think that's another way that they might be able to achieve success this year, even if it's not through winning. Anybody
else get a little chuckle, the little side swipe Richardson took at the Bruins when he was talking about Kevin Dean?
They never had an elite goalie.
They never had a world-class goalie, but they always played good defense. I'm like, what? Tuukka Rask was pretty good for a while.
He wasn't listening.
Yeah, Tim Thomas had a few good seasons there. Like, wow, that was a little backhanded compliment right there. Like I was, that must be left over from his Montreal days. But I got a chuckle out of that. I mean, it's not a surprise that those are the assignments. Kevin Dean was a defenseman like Richardson and has had some success as running defenses and PKs. And Derek Plant was a forward, and it's kind of like, well, and Derek King's going to help as Luke Richardson said, the 5-on-5 game planning, maybe like the 6-on-5. Stuff like that, overall helping. So much like Kyle Davidson has built his front office, I think Luke Richardson is taking that same approach where it's like, I need help, and I'm going to take as many voices in the room to help me, and it's a healthy approach. Doesn't seem to be any ego on either the front office staff or the coaching staff at this point, and for two guys that are entering their first seasons ever doing this at that level, it's good to know that they're not trying to take it all on themselves, that they're like, hey, we've got really smart people working behind us, both on the bench and in the GM's office. It's a good approach.
What I liked from what Luke Richardson said about, coming into this first experience is that he's going into the locker room without really having any preconceived notions of, who are the leaders? Like, yes, we understand Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane are the biggest voices in the locker room, but who are the other guys that are going to step up and be leaders in the locker room, and how he spoke about seeing these guys, in their natural habitat in the locker room on the ice through practices and stuff, and seeing how they handle themselves. And he even said, he's like, I'm not going to be in my office. I'm going to be in the locker room because I want to be with the team and get a feel for what they bring to the table and, how they interact. And I think that's really a good aspect to have, because if you have that, I think if you have that divide between like, oh, okay, coach is like this, going into his office is like, crossing a border or a line or whatever. And you're like, okay, now you're in the coach's office and it's a different mentality than being in the locker room. I think it's a good idea for him to kind of mesh all that together and be like, look, like this whole organization is going to be working together towards a goal. And there's going to be, very few separations of like hierarchy, I guess I would put it. So I think it's kind of Jay, you've mentioned it before, like how, Luke Richardson and Kyle Davidson are kind of looking at the organization and looking at this opportunity kind of as like a blank slate to kind of see how they can put their stamp on things. And with Davidson, player personnel, front office personnel, like he's really kind of come into it with no necessary like holding on to anything just because they were here before. Like we saw it with the DeBrincat trade, we saw it with the Kirby Dach trade. Like he's not really just holding on to things because people say he should. He's trying to do something to, in the long term, build out a team that's going to have his footprint on it. So it's interesting that, again, from both of their perspectives, kind of having that mentality, and I think it's very interesting for Richardson to kind of go in and say, yes, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane have earned the right to be the big voices in the locker room, have their opinions on what's going to happen day in and day out, but also I have to treat them as any other player. I think that's really interesting for him to say coming into his first official head coaching gig.
Yeah, it kind of mirrors a little bit what Kyle Davidson said at his end of the year press conference when asked about Toews and Kane and do you owe them an explanation of things? And he kind of like, I don't have to explain anything to them, really. Like, I'm going to let them know what's going on, but other than that, it's up to them if they want to buy in or not. So,
and then Richardson said today, though, that those are the two guys you probably had the most communication with during the offseason. So, look, I think those guys have earned that right to be informed a little bit on what's going on, but at the same time, I think Toews would be more of an issue than Kane. I don't think Kyle Davidson wants Toews coming in and telling him how to run the team either.
Right.
I think there's a healthy balance of, hey, here's what it is, and thanks for your input, but we got it.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And to express that pretty clearly that, hey, we're going to keep you guys informed of what's going on, but ultimately it's our decision because regardless of whether they're traded or not, they're both free agents after this year. And that sort of leads me to the next thing. Davidson was asked about potential contract extensions for those guys. I think, what was the terminology he used? Like nothing.
He said nothing formal.
Nothing formal.
Nothing formal.
Yeah.
Whereas when he was asked about like thoughts or conversations about moving either of those players, he said there's been no discussions. I just thought it was interesting that when I think you might even brought up the question of contract extensions.
I think it was Scott.
Was it Scott? It was from that direction of the room. But yeah, the question of like, okay, well, contract extensions then have those discussions happen? For him just to say like, well, nothing formal. To me, I don't know if I'm just reading into nothing, but to me it sounds like, to use a different term, like, oh, nothing formal as compared to no discussion. That's something, I think.
I feel like I didn't personally read into it as much as that. I feel like just as a GM, I mean, you're constantly covering all your bases so much that with every player, you kind of talk about everything to a little bit. Like any player who's going into the last year of your contract, I'm sure you'd have just a preliminary talk about that kind of thing. So I'm not sure we should really read into it as, oh, maybe they will re-sign. I mean, maybe they will, but I'm not sure this really changed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nate in the chat has a couple good questions. The first one says, how much of the compete that they've shown in camp is because of the lack of secured roster spots and the opportunity to be the first guy called up? That's certainly a factor. Mm-hmm. All these guys in prospects camp know that there's probably at least 2 or 3 forward spots available, probably 1 or 2 defensive spots available at this time. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. But at the same time, I'm going to keep going Alex Nylander just because it's on my mind.
Easy target.
Yeah, he is an easy target, but that's not a guy who you would really see up the intensity, right? I think you just have a certain breed of player intentionally. You've got these guys that want to play hard and want to have a good showing regardless of opportunity. Because like you talk about, Korchinski is not playing in the NHL this year. Samuel Savoie is not playing in the NHL this year. This is not happening. So, but they're still out there playing as hard as they can, trying to make an impression probably more than earn a spot. But Nate, I do think that's part of it. And the other question Nate has is, did either Luke or Kyle speak about the mentality of the locker room other than compete, especially in regards to the looming cloud of the fire sale that's been rumored all season? What I remember is him basically saying that players don't really think about it that way. Right. They just want to win the game that night. That's kind of how I recall the general response to that question.
Yeah, he mentioned, to just tack on that first question real quick, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's first practice and Friday's first practice to see the compete level of the veterans. Like, yeah, it's easy for the prospects to like go out. This is my first shot in front of the guy that drafted me. I'm going to bust my ass and say, and make him happy he picked me. But you got to remember, this is a first-year coach, pretty much it's a whole new regime. So these veterans, they need to impress Luke Richardson right off the bat too, because if your first impression to your new coach is that you're just going through the motions because you feel like your spot is cemented, that might not go good for you. So I want to see how the veterans have those first drills tomorrow. That's going to be interesting to watch. But the mentality of the locker room, Richardson said early in the press conference, stressing chemistry, that you can't have success on the ice until you build chemistry off of it. And it's all about building relationships with each other in the locker room, outside of the rink, that leads to playing hard for each other on the ice. So I think, these guys, they'll tell you they don't focus on that stuff, and to a degree they're not lying, but for some guys you can't avoid it. We're going to ask them questions all season long. Hey, Patrick, have you waived your trade clause?
Yeah.
Why not? So it's unavoidable, but they have a job to do, and it's winning that hockey game on that night. Like, they're focused on right now, opening night of the preseason next Tuesday. That's all they care about right now. And I think you can put the blinders on while you're at the rink, and then when you leave the rink, it's up to you to what you're going to tune in, what you're going to tune out.
I think a lot of the veterans too have as much to prove as the young guys. I mean, obviously Kane and Taves and Seth Jones are kind of in their own category, but guys like Connor Murphy, Jujhar Khaira, Tyler Johnson coming off major injuries, they want to show what they can do. Guys like Domi and Athanasiou coming in, kind of off down years, but had previously been good, and they want to show that they're still in their peak of their career and can still be 20, 30 goal guys. A lot of these veterans are not exactly going to be comfortable in where they are too. Like, they're going to want to have something to prove just as much as maybe some of the AHL, NHL tweener guys trying to prove that they can earn a roster spot.
I think Seth Jones is going to be a guy that's going to have a bit of a chip on his shoulder to start the year. He's a guy that admittedly didn't start great last year. Obviously, down the stretch, got asked that, hey, you guys ever going to score a power play goal from a defenseman?
Yeah, right.
Of course, first power player in the World Juniors, he scores a power play goal. So, but I think that's a guy that, like, another one that, he hears the chatter. He hears the people that just, never liked him from day one just because of the trade and the contract, two things that out of his control. I think he's a guy that's going to have a lot to prove and will start tomorrow making that impression.
Yeah, even if he doesn't hear it, his mom will tell him about
yes,
people saying it.
I'm sure she has printed out plenty of tweets the last year.
I think also for Jones, it'll be nice for him to have the whole summer to settle in here. There's not the expectations this year there, as there were last year. I think early on you saw him coming in trying to justify the contract, and that never works. Just play your game, do your thing, and after maybe the first month or so, he really settled in and became one of the more defendable players. But kind of going back to how you want to see how the veterans compete in camp, hopefully, aside from Kane, Taves, and Jones, there's no real guarantees here. Like, Kyle Davidson, if he's shown anything, is that he's not loyal to these people. He has no ties to them, doesn't care. He's going to do what's best for the team long term, and frankly, what's best for his long-term career health, right?
Right.
So I don't think anyone should walk into camp and say, like, well, I've got this wrapped up. Like Taylor Radish and Sam Lafferty aren't going to be, like, strutting into the Fifth Third Arena tomorrow like, I got this whole on lock. I really think there's, when you talk about guaranteed spots, Taves, Kane, Domi, Athanasiou,
Seth
Jones, Murphy,
Mrazek and Stalock, just because
right.
they have to be.
But but really, who else? Tyler Johnson, probably.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
it's
I don't know if anything's guaranteed.
Well, and I think it speaks to the kind of characteristics that Kyle Davidson wants in those players, is that I don't think he's really the people that he's brought in through trades, through free agency, all the guys he drafted. I don't think that they have the characteristic trait of feeling content with just being. Luke Richardson spoke about it too. Just being here shouldn't be enough. Like, you have to prove that you can belong in the NHL and then also prove that you should stay in the NHL and you should build upon it. Just getting here shouldn't be the complacent part of things. And I don't think the organization is building with players, again, like an Alex Nylander, who seem to be just complacent being in the NHL and kind of trying to let things come to him. He was traded for Sam Lafferty, who immediately made an impact in the competitiveness of the team. So I think Davidson is building with players that are going to come in and compete for positions, whether it's Max Domi or it's Paul Ludwinski. Like they're going to come in and they're going to play really hard, and I think that's going to be a good thing to kind of set the tone for the organization moving forward.
You talk about like the impact of one player not pulling her weight. It affects everybody.
Yeah,
it really does. Like it's when you've got someone out there not competing hard, not playing hard, playing for themselves, it not only aggravates the teammates, it also throws the entire game off. Like, a guy's missing his passes or not hustling, not back checking, and it ends up in the back of the net. It's like everyone just kind of goes palms up. Mm-hmm. Oddly enough, yesterday I was on Instagram and an old reel from the Madhouse podcast popped up. And it was me and James talking about Patrick Kane being frustrated with Nylander. Maybe that's why he's on my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like missing passes, stick handling himself offsides, all these sorts of things. And you could see watching games how frustrated Patrick Kane would get. Like, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's go. Like, let's get on the same page. Just having guys that compete is going to make a huge, huge difference. And it just feels different. I know it's just prospects camp, but the energy that we saw in the last two games and during camp has been through the roof and something I haven't seen in a while. And I think there's a lot of things that go into that, from roster availability to wanting to improve yourself, on and on and on. But look, from top to bottom, everybody in a Blackhawks sweater was working their ass off in camp and during that tournament. So I'm really interested to see what the preseason is going to look like.
I think there was a really notable difference between going back to like the 2019 Traverse City tournament, which was one of my first things covering the team myself, and the team they had there, a prospect tournament at that time, to now 3 years later. Just the difference in quality of the prospects was really noticeable this past week. And I just looking at their draft pedigree and everything we've analyzed throughout the summer, that's kind of been obvious, but to see it on the ice and in person and just how they were working together, and also just the individual motivation and skill that was there, I think it really stood out. And we might have a lot of kind of depressing hockey to watch this season, because a lot of those prospects, or most of those prospects, aren't going to be on the team. But at least to have that little glimpse of maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, what the team might look like and some of the guys who might be on it, and see how good they looked, was definitely a needed source of optimism.
Yep, we've got a super chat to get to and a bunch of good questions in the comments we're going to get to. But first, we got to tell you about our friends at Green Ridge Farm. They're a Chicago local meat and cheese company offering you a better all-natural option. They've got the deli meats going. I was at my Jewels yesterday, saw the Green Ridge Farm meats and fine cheeses there. I got some of the low-sodium turkey. Looking forward to a sandwich after work today.
Nice.
And they brought in the meat sticks last week. Mm-hmm. Oh, the meat sticks. Man, they're so delicious. They've got the chicken, the Black Forest beef, the jalapeno cheddar, and the spicy chili. Me and Lawrence were sharing a meat stick, Lady in the Tramp style, the other day. It was awesome.
CHGO Bears After Dark.
If you haven't tried them yet, you don't know what you're missing. Again, all natural. They're fresh and flavorful. Great for packing for your lunch. Put in your kids' lunch. Those meat sticks are absolutely terrific. If you haven't tried them yet, you don't know what you're missing. Right now, go to greenridgefarm.com, order any 3 meat products, and include a pack of meat sticks in your cart, and those meat sticks will be free simply by using the code CHGO when you check out. Green Ridge Farm is awesome. Get yourself some Green Ridge Farm, simply natural meat.
Well, we're definitely excited that the season is almost here. Officially gets underway tomorrow with that first practice. If you're looking to get yourselves some tickets to some of the exciting early season home games for the Blackhawks, we recommend you check out our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best tickets possible and the best deals for tickets to all your sporting events, concerts, and shows. We were talking about it earlier. Our White Sox guys have been taking advantage of the Game Time app. There are tickets for tonight's White Sox Cleveland game. I don't want to say the wrong team name again. For as low as $1, but we were scrolling through the Blackhawks. There are a lot of games available where you can get tickets for under $20, under $30.
Pretty reasonable prices.
Great deals. Of course, the Marion Hossa game is a little pricey. Some of the early season games are a little pricey, but wait it out. Wait to the day of. Get yourself a great deal.
Even host tonight, you can get in for $66.
That seems
pretty
good.
That's a great deal.
So if you love CHGO, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't, you will love Game Time. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the podcast description. If you're watching us on YouTube, scroll down, hit that like button on your way down, and then you'll see the link for the Game Time. Click it, buy your tickets, or if you're wherever you're listening to this podcast, the audio version, the link will also be in the description there. So click on it. Join over 15 million people who've downloaded the Game Time app and score the best seats to all your favorite events, including maybe that Chicago-Houston professional football game this Sunday, where there will be encased meats and adult beverages for the low price of $34. CHGO first of many football tailgates are going on this Sunday from 8 a.m. to noon at the corner of Roosevelt and Michigan. Not on the corner, but in the parking lot that's at that intersection.
We're just going to be on the corner.
I might be on the corner.
Wave as you drive
everybody
by.
else
We're
is going to
there.
be in the tailgate. $34. Head over to allchgo.com. Click on the banner there. You get your tickets. $34 get you all you can eat, all you can drink from 8 a.m. all the way until kickoff. Don't need a ticket for the game, but if you want, check out Game Time. Get your ticket for that Chicago versus Houston grudge match, and then get your ticket for the tailgate. Join us there. It's just the Lovie Smith
true,
revenge
yeah.
game.
I love Lovie.
Does he still have the beard? God,
Yeah.
He has one of the greatest beards of all time.
It's impressive. It's like Zeus-like. It's Mount Olympus-esque beard. It's good stuff.
I'm a big Lovie Smith fan. I don't know where you guys are on Lovie Smith, but
I never had a problem.
I didn't have
with
to
him.
cover him, so I guess I liked him. There were times, like in his press conference, he seemed to be a little condescending to some of the questions. So I guess never having to actually ask him a question helps. But
Yeah.
you just have to know he can't just flat out say all of my quarterbacks have sucked.
right, I mean, listen, I think every Bears coach in the history of Bears coaches since George Halas died can get a bit of a free pass.
Yeah.
They haven't been given the best deck of cards to play with.
That's right.
There's
There
Lovie
it is.
Smith's
Oh,
beard.
yeah,
Lovie.
that's glorious. Good
He's
for
in-
Lovie.
He's still in good shape.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mess with him.
Looks like he can play.
Put him on the fourth line.
He might have to.
I got a bit of a man
might
crush
have
on
to.
Lovie. I got to be honest. Ever since the beard came in, just outstanding. All right, let's get to our super chat here from the Lebowski 5. He says, I bought the CHL season streaming package to see our prospects in their respective leagues and to follow Bedard closely.
Good call.
Is this too excessive?
Not at all.
No.
Great.
I mean, we're not going to do that, but
It's a great investment.
Are you available on Wednesdays to chat us up
Yeah,
about
right.
what's going on in the CHL? We'll be happy to have you on.
yeah, you can be our correspondent.
No,
that's
that's
not
a really good investment because the Blackhawks have a number of really good prospects in the various CHL leagues that are going to play prominent roles. You got in the WHL, obviously the big name is Connor Bedard, who's not officially a Blackhawk yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But we're willing that into the we're willing that.
Come late June, he very might will be. But yeah, I mean it's you can watch Bedard, you can watch Colton Dock, Nolan Allen,
Korchinski.
Jalen Lipin is in the WHL or will be once he's healthy. You got Ethan Del Mastro in the OHL, captain of the Mississauga Steelheads. Gosh, who else?
Savoie?
Samuel
You
Savoie.
guys are all loving him last
Jake-
week.
Jay's
Every
Jay's
time,
favorite guy.
including today, every time someone mentions him at a presser, Jay looks at me and just gives me this big shit-eating grin, like, "Yep, that's my guy."
We were-
He did
we
it
were-
again today.
We were walking
Even
out.
though we called him Savoy,
He did call him Savoy.
so
we were walking out, and he had his upper half gear on, and probably either going in or coming out of media day. And I was just like, "Hey, you gonna go talk to your friend over there?" He was like,
did
"Ah,
Jay
I
just
don't want to
squeal a
bother
little
him."
bit?
I'm
Did
just
you-
saying, again, unprovoked, Kyle Davidson mentions him. Say who stood out. That was one of the names you went to first.
true.
He didn't say Reichel.
Apparently, he got your Venmo cleared. It cleared before he got
I
to the
just like
podium.
to the reason I'm so pleased with it is because I am the proud owner of imposter syndrome, and I like to have my opinions verified by people who are paid to know these things. So when Kyle Davidson's like, yes, Savoie did look good, I'm like, all right, I'm not an idiot, at least on this one. I'm an idiot for other reasons, but not for that one specifically. So that's exciting. All right, there's a chat I want to get to. Where'd it go? There we go. Raphael says, I see clearly Max Domi playing the same role of the cat with him and Reichel and Kane. That would be an awesome line. That is one of the things that shocked me about Luke Richardson. Flat out today said, I'm going to put Domi with Kane to start.
Yeah, usually those questions of, like, what are your lineups going to be before you hit even day one of training camp, the coach usually says, well, we haven't even hit day one of training camp, so we don't know what the lines
Yeah.
would be. But he actually said, Kane and Domi will likely be paired together. Also said that young defensemen like Kevin Korchinski and Ethan Del Mastro will be paired with veterans. So I thought that was interesting, and that's an interesting strategy to go in and not just say, all our NHL guys are just going to be paired with NHL guys. Like, they're giving an opportunity for the young guys to kind of gain some experience with some of the vets.
I think Domi is probably going to be one of the most interesting players on this year's team. I mean, he's shown before in Montreal that he can be a star player, a clear first or second line scorer, and he's also a kind of talking about guys with motivation and guys with a little bit of grit. I mean, that definitely fits with Domi. When at his introductory press conference earlier this summer, just on Zoom, he sounded really motivated and sounded like kind of a guy who'll provide a little bit of interest, a little bit of spark to this team, and to see him immediately get the opportunity with Kane right off the start is going to be fascinating. I mean, I feel like he has the potential to score 30 goals, to score 60 points. It might not be likely, but the upside's there. And if he can do that, he could be traded for maybe a second or third round pick at the trade deadline, or maybe the Hawks even look at kind of making him a longer term piece of this rebuild, considering he's still not that old. He could still, continue that pace for a few more years and perhaps into the next contention window. So I think Domi in particular is going to be a really interesting piece to see how they move him around and what kind of role he ends up filling.
I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons to start Domi with Kane, and we know that's not going to be every night. But his playing style, he's got the speed to keep up with Kane. Mm-hmm. He's got that. He could be the guy that goes and does the dirty work. He'll have more room out there because of Kane to get to the front of the net. But Kyle Davidson's probably had a little something to do with that, saying, listen, it's no secret. He signed him to trade him unless, he wants to stick around. But likely, a one-year deal on a rebuilding team usually means you're going to get traded. What better way to drive up his trade value than have him play with Patrick Kane? Because whoever plays left wing on Patrick Kane usually has a pretty damn good season.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think he's going to be scoring like DeBrincat was.
No, I don't think so.
He definitely has the opportunity to keep up with Kane and make that kind of impact.
Will he score as much as DeBrincat? Probably not. He doesn't have as good a shot. Will he have as many opportunities? Probably. Mm-hmm. Like, he's going to have the opportunity to have a career year playing on the same line with number 88. I think it's a good move. For silly reasons, at some point I want to see Athanasiou, Tyler Johnson, Patrick Kane, 88, 89, 90 line, just because it would look fun on the score sheet. Just start it once. That's all I ask.
I'm sure we'll see that at some point. But I want to ask you about Reichel. We saw 4 assists on Sunday against the Wild prospects, and it looks, one of the best players of development camp. There's been some offseason speculation that he'll start things in Rockford. But then today it was sort of like Kyle Davidson flat out said there's no plan yet, really. We're going to see how things go. I know they want to be patient with all their prospects. I understand that. I just don't understand what another month or whatever in Rockford is going to do for Lukas Reichel. At this point, hasn't he, in your mind, I don't know, what do you think? Has he earned the right to start the season a Hawk as long as the preseason isn't terrible? What's your thought on how Reichel should be handled?
I think he has earned the right. I think, if anything, the hesitation would just be because you don't want his confidence to just kind of get hurt right off the bat by being on a team that's going to be losing a lot. This Rockford team is probably going to be one of the best teams in the AHL. I mean, they have a lot of prospects there, and they've also brought in a lot of kind of AHL veterans who are among the top scorers at that level last season on other teams. So to maybe start the year there and be on a winning team just to build up that confidence a little bit, and then come up to the NHL. I could kind of see that, but I think he certainly has proven that he's ready to be at the NHL level pretty soon, if not now. I'm intrigued to see how his summer of training and gaining strength affects things. I mean, he gained about 15 pounds. He worked really closely with Paul Goodman, the strength and conditioning coach, to kind of figure out how to use that weight in a way that'll help him win board battles and protect the puck better. We certainly saw him struggle a little bit against bigger, older players last season in his brief NHL stints. So if he can show in training camp and in the preseason that he's really improved in that regard, and that's something that is kind of taken a step forward for him, then I think it's going to be tough to not have him on the NHL roster to start, because that was really the one weakness in his game. And if he can get to the front of the net, really fend off opponents, in addition to his excellent ability to gain the zone with speed and dish it off to teammates and his vision that were already elite, then I think we're really going to see it hard to send him down to start the year.
What'd you make of him playing on the penalty kill during the prospects tournament? Anything? I seemed okay, willing to block shots. He was guarding the point many times and was getting it away. I don't know if that's just a way of sort of integrating him into the more, when I say physical, I don't mean finishing checks, but the blocking shots, the forechecking, those sort of things. I thought it was very interesting to see him on PK1 during the prospects tournament.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen a movement kind of around the league of guys using their best players on the penalty kill more than just the grinders. Like we saw DeBrincat killing penalties last year. Guys like Sebastian Aho in Carolina, we wouldn't really think of as a PK guy, but he plays PK 1 minutes there. So I think long term, I mean, you'd like to use Reichel in that kind of role at the NHL eventually. So just to get him some experience there certainly can't hurt. But also just in terms of on that team, on that prospects team last week, he was definitely the best player, so you want to use him in as many situations as possible. But yeah, I think he held his own. I think it's good experience for him to get.
Yeah, he didn't I don't recall him on the PK at all last year in Rockford when covering them, but you mentioned DeBrincat did it. I think a lot of teams kind of want to maybe get those responsible, offensive, talented guys out there to kind of maybe steal a shorthanded goal every once in a while. It doesn't hurt to have a guy that can catch a defenseman pinching and go the other way. And I also think probably he was on there during the Curvers stuff because he was like the veteran of that team. He had the most pro experience. So just, another cap in his feather. It'd be interesting to see what happens. But, I know when we originally talked about I said cap in his feather. Whatever. You know what I meant.
That's difficult to do.
Well, see, he's that talented. But I think it was Scott Powers who originally said that the Hawks were maybe thinking of starting him in Rockford, but then kind of expanded on that, saying that they don't when they call him up, they want him to stay up. They don't want him to do the back and forth. And that makes sense. But when you look at this roster, we've said it many times already. If he's not one of the best 12 forwards you have come October 11th, something's gone wrong. I mean, just looking on paper, he should be in your top 6. So I like that they're at least vocally saying they're going to let Lukas Reichel make that decision for Lukas Reichel, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, as they should. It really, for me, if he would have to play so poorly that he couldn't be in the NHL to start the season. I don't think, like you said, Jay, like what does 1 more month or 2 more months in the AHL really do? I think we saw what we needed to from him last season at the AHL level, that he was one of the best rookies at that level. Hard to do as a teenager in the AHL to play at a point per game pace. And he held his own a little bit at the NHL level, but you can really only get better at the NHL level by playing NHL competition. And I think he's kind of at the point in his development where he's only going to get better with NHL competition and NHL minutes. And, the question was asked, about like an organizational, like blanket plan for prospects. And Davidson said, like, it's case by case. And I think that's the right way to go, because you can't just say, because you're a prospect, you're going to play all season in Rockford and maybe you'll get 1 call up or 2 call ups or whatever. Like, you kind of have to, like, if Reichel's ready to go right away, you bring him up. If a guy like Ian Mitchell isn't ready to go right away, then he goes to Rockford, and then if he proves he's ready, he comes up. I think that's probably the best way to handle it, especially when they have so many young players that could potentially bounce back and forth or are going to be competing for spots. So it makes the training camp, like position battles, like really exciting coming into tomorrow's first day of camp.
And it certainly didn't look like confidence is an issue for Reichel on that game on Sunday.
Absolutely not.
He was like, I'm the best player here, and I'm going to show you why. So I don't think he needs to go to Rockford to get confidence. We'll see how the preseason shakes out. But I'd love to see him get it, find the back of the net in that first game that he plays. That will go a long way, and maybe we can stop having this Reichel to Rockford discussion.
Yeah, I hope so. Another good question from Nate here. I guess we'll go throughout the entire panel. He says, before we get into the full swing of the preseason rather, can each of you give a guy that could surprise everyone and earn playing time at the NHL this season? Why don't we start with our guest, Ben Pope? Ben?
Oh, man, put me on the spot.
Yeah, that's what you're paid for.
Oh, I gotta
Asterisk, you are not being paid.
That's true. It's all right. Man, I gotta scroll through my mind. I think it's not really a surprising guy exactly, but I feel like there was so much hype about Ian Mitchell a couple of years ago when he was kind of the top prospect that everyone was talking about, kind of like Reichel is now. And then he didn't really do that well in his first season in the COVID year in 2021. So, and then Davidson took over with a different kind of approach to prospect development. So we spent all of last season in Rockford. We didn't really hear that much about him, and he's kind of faded a little bit out of relevance. But he was really good in the AHL last year. I mean, he was the number one defenseman for Rockford. He was playing 25, 26 minutes a night, all situations, helped them have their kind of second half rally to make the playoffs, which I think a lot of us didn't really see coming. But he's at the point, he's 24 years old, I think. This is kind of the make or break year for him if he's going to prove he is going to be an NHL player. And I think there's kind of a little bit of post-hype reason for optimism there that we've kind of forgotten about him, and the Blackhawks have brought in a lot of other talented defensive prospects. But he is still a guy who has some of the same skills that once made him a top prospect, and he's built up his confidence, talking about confidence, and has more experience now. And I think there's going to be an opportunity, especially with Jake McCabe injured the first few months of the season, to get in the opening night lineup and play regular minutes. And I feel like he could be a guy that could do it. I mean, there's no guarantee. I mean, maybe he kind of continues to fizzle out the way he has, but I think there's an opportunity there that he might be able to seize and kind of get back on the radar after fading away a little bit.
I think I'm going to steal Greg's pick because I know how much he likes him.
You son of a...
I see what Greg sees in him. I really like Isaac Phillips's game. I think his development has been kind of fast tracked since he was able to jump to the AHL early because of the COVID season. They changed the age requirements and whatnot in the AHL. So he basically took what would have been another OHL year and played in the AHL and really kind of fast tracked his development. Got his first taste of NHL action last season, and I think he's one of the top guys in this group of young defensemen that the Blackhawks have that all could find their way to the NHL this season. I really like his game. I like his physicality, and just the offensive instincts that he has, that he plays with. Really, like when you think about like a guy who's really good in pretty or is developing to a really good skill set in really all facets of the game, his skating, his physical play, offensive contributions, being sound defensively. Like he's kind of starting to check all those boxes, and I think he can be a really good player at the NHL level. So I would be surprised if he doesn't get some NHL action. I don't know if it's going to be right out of camp, but I would be surprised if he doesn't get some NHL action this season.
He could be what Ian Mitchell was last year in Rockford this year if he doesn't make the team. I wouldn't write him off as far as making the team out of camp, but I could see him taking on being that number one guy at Rockford for most of the season, taking that next step.
Yeah.
As Anders Sorensen said Sunday, I asked him why we didn't see Galvis or Phillips play at all during prospect camp, and he's like, "We know what we got. Mm-hmm. We know what both those guys bring." So I don't know if you want to read into that too much, but it seems like the two with the least to prove, I guess, in the mind of Anders Sorensen, and
At
I would
least-
assume Kyle
at least
Davidson.
defensively, right? You know,
Right,
at least
defensively,
defensively.
exactly.
Jay.
Oh, you have
since
to go
I'm-
next?
Since I'm scrambling, since somebody stole my guy. I have a feeling I know who you're going to take, so I'm going to scratch that guy.
Samuel, no. I think Cole Gutman's got a real
That's
chance.
who I think,
Coming off a championship season at Denver, he was drafted a few years ago by Tampa in the late rounds and then signed as a free agent with the Hawks. Scored in each of the prospects games and just has I guess you would say, you would put him in a lineup and you know it's going to be okay, right? They probably don't think he's going to light things up at the NHL level. He's not a guy they're projecting to become a star by any means. But in terms of someone who might be ready for NHL play right off the hop, it'd be a bottom six role, of course. But I think Cole Gutman is a guy who could make an impact early in the season as they wait for maybe some higher-end prospects to develop in the minors before they're ready to come up. I think Gutman's a guy who, like maybe in the mold of a Tanner Carroll, Ben Smith, put him out there and not get hurt for a while kind of guys. I think he fills that role nicely and maybe has a little bit of offensive upside. So I wouldn't be shocked to see good old number 70, Cole Gutman in the Hawks
Dennis
lineup.
Dennis Rasmussen, yeah.
The Moose.
Probably the last and only, right?
I think so. All right, so I'm going to mention a guy that I've talked a little bit about before. And I don't think he's going to make the team out of camp, but this is a guy that later in the season, especially after the trade deadline, we could see in Chicago. That's Michael Tepley, who had a really good second half of the season in Rockford last year.
Yeah.
He was a guy that had some pretty high expectations. I wouldn't say he was ever considered one of their top prospects, but his final year with Winnipeg in the WHL was a really good offensive year. Then he had to play in the AHL in the weird, crazy, icky COVID season when he was supposed to go back to juniors. Didn't really do much, but you can give everybody a pass for that weird season. And then last year, he was like pretty invisible until right around Christmas. I don't think it was any coincidence that that's when he got put on a line with Brent Conley and Lucas Reichel, but his game took off and it stayed at that level throughout the remainder of the season and into the playoffs. He's a guy that took a big step. I don't think he's going to compete for a roster spot in training camp, though I'd like to see him get some preseason time, see what he does. But as the season goes on, if he continues on that trajectory, there's no reason why he can't get a few games after the trade deadline when likely guys like Domi and Anthony Ciu and maybe Kane, maybe Taves, who knows. But all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 forward positions open. Who's going to be those first guys called up? I think he'll be one of those, that wave of guys to come up, late March when they need bodies.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm trying to think of any other kind of news and notes from Richardson and Davidson that maybe we haven't gotten to just. I think we pretty much covered all of it, right? Anything?
Well, yeah. I mean, we touched a little bit about basically saying that there were no discussions about trading Jonathan Toews or Patrick Kane in the offseason. And I think going into this season, as it's kind of been the story, basically been the line all summer has kind of been, these guys are coming into this season. They're going to see how it plays out, give it a go to start. And, with Luke Richardson saying that those are the two guys he's had the most contact with through the summer, I want to get your take on this, Ben, but I think having a head coach like Richardson who's, it seems like he's really open with the interpersonal communication, really cares about kind of the person as well as the hockey player, and has a long kind of career coaching at the AHL level, being an assistant, over 1,400 games played in the NHL. It seems like he's walking into the door with a better perspective for guys like Toews and Kane to have than that they've had in the last few years with a Jeremy Colleton or Derek King taking over. Do you think him coming in could be enough of an impact just from a coaching perspective where they might believe enough in him to say, you know what, maybe we will stick around for a few years?
I don't know about a few years. I mean, we'll have to see, but I certainly think that bringing in Richardson is going to be good for them. He certainly is a really well-respected guy from everyone I've talked to, everyone I've heard from. A incredible reputation around the league as a player, as an assistant coach, as a head coach, and I'm sure that they are happy about that, and that's one thing from this offseason that will give them a little bit of encouragement or optimism. And it's really going to just all depend on how this season plays out. I feel like I'm excited to hear from Taves and Kane tomorrow, finally, after they hit the ice for the first day of camp. They're expected to talk to the media, and I think that'll be really eye-opening to finally hear from them and get their take on everything that's gone down, because we haven't heard from them since the end of last season, when they were saying that they feel like this rebuild doesn't need to take that long and doesn't need to be that drastic, and that's clearly not what ended up happening. So just to get their take on everything finally will be really enlightening. But I do think that the Richardson hire is probably something they were pretty happy about, and maybe even if they are traded this season, can at least make this a rewarding and sort of successful final season for them in Chicago without too much dissonance or just kind of focusing only on when that trade's going to happen, and more just kind of enjoying the ride for them and for everyone around them and fans and us and everybody really involved.
One thing I want to ask you about, you've been on the beat for a long time. Richardson.
I don't know about a long time, but
well, longer than us.
It's felt like a very long time.
Davidson was asked about any more potential injuries being announced, and he kind of was like, well, we're getting our medicals today, so maybe something later. Did you seem to think that there's something coming from his tone there? Or I
did get the sense that maybe somebody's not going to be medically cleared to start camp from what he said there. I'm not sure who it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already heard that McCabe is out, and we saw Connor Murphy and Jujhar Khaira, who both ended last year with long-term injuries, were taking part in the captain's practices at Fifth Third last week. So you'd think that they're ready. I mean, maybe they're not. Maybe it's them, or maybe it's someone else. But I do think we probably will get news on that tomorrow. I don't know anything personally, but we'll see it. I think tomorrow is going to be honestly even more interesting than today, to finally have all the players back and to have an open locker room and to see them on the ice, and just, I mean, that tomorrow is really the first day of training camp from our perspective, and I think that's going to be really interesting, everything that comes out of it.
Yeah, can't wait.
I'm bringing the Vapo Rub for the locker room.
Oh,
for
God.
Yeah.
As long as that stinky wild
That's
players in there
one.
anymore.
I mean, I missed being in locker rooms, but I didn't miss being in locker room. That first waft when you walk in, it's like, oh yeah, hockey's back. Oh boy. Yeah, but no, it's going to be really. I'm excited for many reasons, personally, and just covering this team and our first full season covering it here at CHGO. So I'm super excited to get to the rink. But as you said, just to get all these guys in the same place and kind of get their take on everything that's happened over the summer. Obviously, you know, we're going to get a lot of the cliched answers, but there'll be some tidbits that come out of there that you know, we can get 2 or 3 episodes out of, hopefully. Give us content, boys. That's all we're looking for. But it's going to be a lot of fun to see what kind of energy. I'm expecting a high energy, a lot of, you know, emotion tomorrow. A lot of, basically, from, you know, we talked about why the young guys have a reason to play hard, why the veteran guys have a reason to play hard. And you know, it's got to be an exciting time for this coaching staff and Kyle Davidson too, to kind of be like, yes, this is going to be a long season, but let's start it off on the right foot and do the best we can. And I think there's, for the first time in a long time, there's, even though this particular season won't end with, you know, a parade or playoff games or anything of that nature, but there's real optimism for the first time in a long time surrounding this team. You feel it inside the building, and then with the fan base for the most part. I think big picture, the optimism is as high as it's been for a while.
Well, Luke Richardson said himself he's an optimist, so
he's going to have to be.
He's going to have to be.
That'll help.
Yeah. Well, while we're battling the stink of the hockey locker room, what you could do in these last few weeks of September is get out and get some fresh air on the golf course, and you want to do it looking your best. That's where Pins and Aces comes into play. They are the official golf apparel partner of CHGO. They're also the presenting sponsor of the Big Drive Energy podcast on the All City Network. Pins and Aces is a family-owned golf apparel business, so you got to love that. They have great gear that going to get you a lot of compliments on and off the course. They make different polos, hats, golf bags, even a bag that has a beer sleeve that you can put right there in your bag. It stores up to 7 beers right there in the bag, right next to your 7-iron. Keeps the drinks cold for the entire round, which is great when you're shooting 100 going on to the 14th hole and the drink cart hasn't been around in a while. You just go in your bag, get a couple drinks out of there, and you'll get through the rest of your round. Ben, are you a big golfer?
I'm not.
You're not? Okay.
I have not golfed
Do you like
before,
good
actually.
golf polos?
A good polo, a good shirt's always good.
Perfect. Well, you can go to pinsandaces.com and use the promo code CHGO, and you'll get 15% off of your first order and get free shipping from Pins and Aces. So, again, that's pinsandaces.com, promo code CHGO, 15% off of your first order and free shipping. So, a couple more hot days, or warm enough days, I guess, in September. For you golfers out there, and for you crazy golfers that like to go into November and December, and apparently don't mind having the ball sting your hands 80 times around, get yourself some Pins and Aces. You're going to be looking good on the course.
80, huh? You're pretty good at golf. I got to take it.
That's a front nine.
It's like 200 for me.
Well, that's discounting putts, not counting putts. Yeah, so it's more like 120. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Hey, a couple weeks ago, I was out of town in Disney and came back to the All CHGO studios and saw those sweet cornhole sets we got over there. And they are from Chi-Town Cornhole, otherwise known as Bags. Chi-Town Cornhole. They're the #1 cornhole provider for Chicagoland and Illinois since 2007. What stood out to me was the quality of everything.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's driven by the house with the dudes like selling them in his driveway. The Chi-Town Cornhole sets they look indestructible. They're beautifully illustrated.
Very nice.
And the quality of the bag is something. Like, the perfect weight, the perfect distribution, really sturdy. I was really impressed with the entire makeup of the Chi-Town Cornhole set. I'm looking to order a new set for myself, so that's where I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. And you should too. Their signature box style design can be digitally printed, covered in vinyl, and painted. And their cornhole boards come with built-in drink holders recessed in the back. Just put your beer right in the back there while you're playing. The coolest thing is the LED lighted holes, so you can play at night, see where your bag's supposed to go.
And the little abacus scoreboard.
And the abacus scoreboard was cool. That. And the handles for carrying it. Yes. Instead of banging up your shins carrying your cornhole set from place to place, they have nice handles on them. Really importantly, veteran-owned and operated, so it's always good to support those businesses. They can ship anywhere or offer local pickups. And if you got a corporate design you want to get on there, like our CHGO bags we got here, they can do that too. Check out Chi-Town Cornhole. It is awesome stuff. And we want to remind you before we wrap up, if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube page. If you're listening to the audio podcast, go to our podcast page. Subscribe there as well. And become a member at allchgo.com. You get to pick out a sweet shirt like I've got here. Every team has several designs. I know as the Hawks season goes on, we'll probably get some cool new Hawks designs to go as well. So go to allchgo.com. Become a member. You get access to all of our ad-free written pieces. You've got access to our Discord, and, of course, the free shirt when you sign up. And follow us on social media at CHGO Sports, and we're at CHGO_Blackhawks. So we want to thank Ben Pope for being here, and we'll be back tomorrow at 1:30 after Taves and Kane and the whole crew hit the ice and meet the media at Fifth Third Arena. So we'll talk to you then. Thanks to Lawrence for running things as always. We appreciate it. So until tomorrow, for Greg, Mario, and Ben, I'm Jay. Thanks for watching and listening to the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.